Hello and welcome back to the In the Same Boat podcast. It's been a while since I've actually recorded a new episode because all of the other ones were pre-recorded before our season started. So if you've been following us on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, you've been seeing that In the Same Boat is very busy. I just came off one of our boats. I was there for 2.5 months and we conducted very successfully our second expedition to the UK. We were there for about a month, mainly in Orkney, and we were beach cleaning. We also sailed down the coast of the UK, East Coast, and we went to a school and we took out kids beach cleaning. We did presentations. We did a lot of awareness building events with companies and also engaging with the community. So it was really wonderful. And in Norway, they've also been very busy. Kilak went to Svalbard for the first time. And yeah, so our teams, we have some in the south of Norway, in Nordland, and in Finnmark, which they've been cleaning an insane amount. I think in one morning they found like over 2 tons of plastic, which is insane. Especially because it's one of the most remote areas and is one of the most polluted. So that also is quite terrifying, especially after you hear this episode, which is all about microplastics and the effects of plastic. So it will just show you how important it is to remove this from nature and from our lives. So it's not detrimental to us. But yeah, enjoy the episode and make sure you follow, and I hope you enjoy it. Please feel free to, I think you can comment here. You can let us know on Instagram as well what you think. Yeah, thank you so much for all of you who are listening. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome back to the episode of In the Same Boat. Today we have on Dana Zhaksylykova. She is an environmental scientist and microplastic researcher from Kazakhstan. She's also, I would call you an influencer. She has a big social media following where she shares her research and advocates for microplastic reduction, as well as gives you tips on how to reduce microplastics. Welcome to the podcast, Dana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. I'm also a little bit scared of just like our conversation and having more anxiety than I already do about plastics. But I just want to start by can you tell me a little bit of your backstory? I've seen a little bit of your Instagram on how you studied to be an civil engineer. A civil engineer. So how did you end up in microplastic research?
Yeah, if I go to like very early age of my life, I want to start with my background just for you to understand, is that both of my parents, they're from the Aral Sea. It's the area in Kazakhstan where a huge environmental disaster took place in the 60s. Basically, Aral Sea was one of the largest lakes in the world, but we unfortunately lost 90% of it, so only 10% of it is left right now. Yeah, and of course it affected the biodiversity there, the nature there, the climate there, people, the economy of the place, because a lot of people also, were reliant on this lake for like the source of income and also the source of food. And yeah, basically we lost almost all of it. And my grandfather, he was working and still is working in trying to conserve and maintain what was left of the lake. And of course, it shaped me as a person. And I really wanted to work with something related to the environment, nature, or animals in the future. And when I started my bachelor's, civil and environmental engineering was actually the closest thing to like the environmental studies in my university. And yeah, that's why I had to start this civil environmental engineering. And I basically didn't focus much on civil courses, but I liked every environmental course that I had. And we had environmental chemistry as one course in my bachelor's. And during that time, our professor was looking for students to join his research. And he did all kind of research in environmental area. And I wanted to join him. I didn't really think of staying in academia or making a career in academia, but I really liked research. And we had like very interesting topics like water pollution. I worked on air pollution. I worked with risk assessment, but it was all part of someone else's research. So when I graduated, my professor was like, "You want to start a topic on microplastics?" And to be honest, I wasn't interested in it at all because, the topic was very new and young. So we didn't even cover it in any of environmental courses that I had. And, I knew the basics of like microplastics problem or like plastic problem, but I didn't really consider it like some kind of a big problem or something like that is really related to me or my country. I always thought like plastic pollution is the problem of like, very distant countries like South Asia, for example. Yeah. And I didn't really feel like it affected me or something like this. But I was like, okay, let me just start reading papers and relevant articles about that. And I was like literally shocked with everything, because microplastics were found absolutely everywhere where scientists looked for them. And it was like 3 years
Mm.
ago, where all these studies about human bodies didn't even, come out. But I was still shocked with everything, with all the information that we had at that point. And like the lack of regulation was another thing, that I couldn't find like proper regulations in place when it comes to microplastic and plastics. And, a lot of these hidden sources for microplastics and plastic that we don't really know about. Like I didn't know that chewing gum can be made out of plastic or something like this. Um,
Yeah.
and plastic is such a shapeshifter. When
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of plastic, I was always imagining, that like plastic water bottles or like
Yeah.
plastic bags, and that's it, or like plastic
Same.
toys, and that's it. But when you like dig deep into that topic, you realize, yeah, plastic can be any shape, any, feel, and any like look like anything, like clothing or anything like this. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
Cosmetics,
was
makeup.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like microplastics are ingredients in some things. So it was super crazy for me. And now I realize, like, yeah, it really affects me and everyone. And there's like not a single person who will not be affected by microplastics. And that's why I really wanted to stick with that topic. And yeah, I've been in that research already for 3 years, and I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, it does feel like the past few years, honestly, the idea of plastic pollution and microplastic has just like skyrocketed. Like it is much more of a mainstream than it was like when I was a teenager. I don't remember ever hearing anything about microplastic. It wasn't even in my radar. Or even like in college, there was like starting, and this was just like 4 years ago. And now it's everywhere. And yet still, we don't know exactly what to do with it. We don't know what it means. And there's a lot of misinformation. And I'm curious, like now that you're a full-time microplastic researcher, like what is your research focus on? Because I think microplastics can be, like you said, it's everywhere. So what is it that you do with it?
So first, when I started, I only worked with wastewater samples. So we wanted to see like how good are wastewater treatment plants in removing microplastics. That was in Kazakhstan. I also did that in Spain. Here in Germany, I kind of do the same thing, but we expanded the diversity of samples. Let me say it
Mm-hmm.
this way. So we not only looking at wastewater samples, we also took samples from lakes and rivers from around the city. And we also checked tap water, and we also purchased plastic bottles and glass bottles to check if there are any microplastics. Yeah, so that's basically what I was doing this year.
Okay. And can you share with us like what has been some of your findings? Although I can guess that it's like microplastic everywhere.
Yeah, we actually found them, I think, pretty much everywhere. Yeah. Of course, the highest abundance of microplastics were found in wastewater samples, because that's where like microplastics are concentrated. But we
Yeah.
did found microplastics in some rivers and lakes, especially those that are very close to like touristic areas, or where like a lot of people go to.
Mm.
And yeah, I found them in tap water and bottled water too.
Yeah, yeah. So then at this point, like I know I've seen it already in papers. It's like microplastic has been found in the human body, it's in the air, it's in the water. So obviously, like you said before, we're all affected by it. Like even in the most remote areas that they're doing research on water samples and on birds and like on people, it's just microplastic has reached everywhere. Like the Arctic, you're finding microplastics in like the ice, which is insane.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing is, the topic of microplastics and like plastic as a concept is very, very young, something that is very, very
Mm,
young, because plastic has been around for like 80 years. And in
yeah.
terms of like, I don't know, if you compare it to other fabrics and materials, it's like super new, because natural fabrics, for example, cotton has been around for thousands of years, metals have been around for thousands of years, wood have been around for millions of years, and 80 years is still very, very young. But even in that timeline, in that very short time, they infiltrated everything. And with microplastic, it's even newer, because the first time the term microplastics was used was in 2004. That's why I think
Wow.
you didn't hear it when you were a teenager. And until 2011, there were only 27 studies done on microplastics.
Wow. Okay.
And the amount of studies are now doubling and doubling, or even like quadrupling. And a lot of research now is coming out because now we understand that, I don't know, like they're everywhere, absolutely. And we need to properly study this topic. And that daunts me a little bit because we started studying this topic after it already, infiltrated everything, and after we already put plastic into everything we use in our daily lives. But at least we're studying it right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I can imagine it is quite hard to be a microplastics researcher and then go back to your daily life and be surrounded by plastic and not feel absolutely overwhelmed by like, oh my God, we need to stop this. Yeah. And then, okay, so like at this point, we know microplastics are everywhere. You're researching it, you're seeing in the wastewater treatment, you're seeing it in like tap water. And there's ongoing research on this, but why should we be concerned? Because why is this something that we need to keep studying, and what can be the effects of microplastics being everywhere, ingested by like us, by the wildlife, and also by ecosystems, absorbing it by the plants?
As an environmental scientist, I mainly focus on the environment and how it affects ecosystems.
Mm,
So I wouldn't give a lot of comments about like the human health impact, even though
yeah.
there are a lot of chemical additives in plastic. So while plastic is considered more or less inert, or like it wouldn't readily react with your body or anything like that, there's so many chemical additives in the plastic that were added during the production. Um, in one study, they found out like there are in general 16,000 chemicals that can be added during the plastic production intentionally, and over 100,000 of chemicals that are added unintentionally. And that's only what was added during the production. And with microplastic, the thing is, we also call them a cocktail of chemicals because they usually have a lot of chemicals on top of it. And another thing is that they can absorb on its surface a lot of different chemicals as well. So if the microplastic it goes into the water, and then it encounters different chemicals along the way, it will absorb all of them, and you never know what this certain set of chemicals will do. Maybe it
Mm,
will neutralize each other, but maybe worse, it will make the effect even worse. And then it goes, the thousands of kilometers around the world, and then it comes to your, tap water, and you have this old microplastic that's been absorbing a lot of different chemicals along the way. So that's one point that is concerning. But another thing is that what it makes the microplastic topic very difficult, because you can never say like, okay, all the microplastic, they will do this exact effect, because, again, there could be a lot of different chemicals on top of it. Another thing, when it comes to ecosystems, unfortunately, as again we said, microplastics are everywhere, so they're going to affect every living organism. When it comes to fish and birds, unfortunately, they mistake microplastics for food, or like even plastic particles, and that can stuff their guts because they cannot
mm,
just get rid of them. It will not dissolve in their bodies or anything like this. Like after some time, they will eventually die because they will eat too much of it. And when it comes to like plants, there is a very recent finding um, about like microplastics hindering the photosynthesis of plants, because
yeah.
unfortunately plants can absorb microplastics from the soil, and microplastics are already in the soil. So plants will absorb, and not only because microplastics are in the soil, but also because there are a lot of plastic that is used during the agriculture
Yeah.
practices, like plastic mulching, or that like everything is made out of plastic right now. And plants can uptake microplastics from the soil with their roots, and they can physically block the light. And when the plant needs to do this photosynthesis, it needs light. And when
Mm,
microplastic is there, it can block it. So no photosynthesis. And no photosynthesis means no yield. And it was estimated that the reduction of photosynthesis of plants because of microplastics has been estimated to be around 7 to 11%.
wow.
And yeah, and it means it will also, so like what it means in terms of food security for us, because again, as I said, no photosynthesis means no yield. And they estimated that we could lose from 100 to 300 million metric tons of food per year, like from
Oh
major
my God.
crops. And it's not even considering like the production of sea product.
Yeah, like
Like
like seaweed and
weed,
seagrass and
for
stuff like
example.
that?
Yeah, 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 stuff
Okay,
like this.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. But like from the brighter side, they also said that if we just reduce our plastic emission and plastic waste by 13%, we can avoid the loss of food by 30%, which is
Okay.
really good. And it's not that big of an amount that we need to reduce. So there's always like a bright,
Yeah.
positive
We have to
side.
hold on to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We need to, of course.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, what you were saying that is just like yet another reminder that like the climate crisis, the plastic pollution crisis is not just an environmental issue. This is an issue that affects all like it's just everything, like food security. It's going to affect people differently and like yeah, it's just this has to be something that we're all like actively fighting towards finding a solution for it. Because again, it's not just an environmental issue. This is going to affect quality of life in every aspect. It's like
Of course.
a social justice issue as well. And also like so something that you talk a lot about in your social media is not only the research and the fact that microplastic is everywhere, but also the lack of proper regulations. And you mentioned that even at the beginning of when you were talking that you were quite surprised by the fact that there are no proper regulations for microplastic, like how many microplastics that can be released into nature.
Yeah, that's actually I have my favorite story. I usually tell everyone.
Yeah.
So when I just started working with wastewater samples, and I have the result of how many microplastics are in the effluent, so in the water that goes directly into our water body, and I have the amount of microplastics I found. And I was thinking, I need to understand what this result means, right? And like, is it the big number? Is it an okay number, or where it stands in general? Because just saying, okay, I found this amount of microplastic will not tell anything to anyone. And I was started to looking for like different limits or regulations that exist in my country. I wasn't really hopeful. My country is still a developing country, especially when it comes to environmental issues. And I didn't find anything. And I was like, okay, I was expecting that. So I was curious about limits or regulations in place in different countries, in other countries. So like developed countries, maybe in the US, Canada, European Union, or anything. And I literally found nothing. So I was looking for this regulation, and there's no limit to microplastics discharge. Basically, any wastewater treatment plant in the world can discharge as many microplastics as possible. So even if it's like 2 microplastics per day or like 2 trillions of microplastics per day, is that there's no limit to that. And on top of that, it's not even monitored. Like there's, specific equipment in place or anything like this, or specific scientists who will look specifically for microplastics. Yes, they check other chemicals, like other toxins or anything like this, but not for microplastics. And that's the case for, I think by now, there's still none of the countries that are regulating this. And this water goes directly, like is discharged directly into our water bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is quite terrifying when you think about that, about like how much microplastics are shed and that there is no limitations. And I think when I think of that, my brain goes to kind of what we just talked about, how young all of this research is, how the term microplastic is quite young. And I'm hoping that as this becomes more prevalent, that as we're really all accepting like this is a real issue, that governments will come into place and put policies to limit that. Because right now it feels like it's a free for all, even just like the chemicals that are added, what you just said about intentionally adding 16,000, but maybe unintentionally adding 100,000 chemicals in the production of plastic, sorry. And also the fact that we don't actually know what those chemicals are. Like, I found out very recently that companies don't have to disclose what they're adding in, and that a lot of the times the components are like intellectual property, which is quite mind-boggling because it is affecting our health.
Yeah, that's true. They can disclose it because of like, yeah, as you said, like it's their company secret. So
Yeah,
nobody's.
that is pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Oh my God. So then, do you think, have you doing this work now? Have you seen, because I don't know about this, are there conversations being had about putting regulations in place to limit the amount of microplastics?
Yeah, totally. At least here in the European Union. I mean, there are some regulations that took place in general. In 2015 in the US, they started this microbead free ban or something like this.
Okay.
In other countries, I think in South Korea, they also started to ban microplastics from skincare. And in European Union, they put also a lot of like a whole I don't know, chapter of regulations when it comes to microplastics. They started with glitter.
Mm.
The glitter was before purely plastic, microplastic, but now they banned it, and they have a lot of bans that is concerned with microplastics that are put into our skincare and stuff like this. But that will be, in the span of several years, so like 10-15 years.
Yeah.
I think they're also planning to put these limits and regulations on microplastics that is discharged from wastewater treatment plants, because that was what I was actually working on in Spain, because the wastewater treatment plant was interested in how many microplastics they had in their influent, because they knew that this regulation is coming. So they wanted to know like how many they do have in the first place. So yeah, we should stay hopeful. Of course, we still need to demand this regulation and policies, but at least there is some movement for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that is really good to hear. That's good to hear, especially what you said. Like, we do also have the power to kind of demand it. So we do have to keep pushing that. And I think the research that you're doing is super important and really valuable. And I wanted to ask you, in your research, and getting into the world of microplastics, what are some of the most surprising things that you have found on like what you said before, that the gum has plastic and things like that?
So yeah, gum was one of the shocking ones. If I talk about other things, it's probably that aluminum cans are lined with plastic, actually. That one
I did not know
but
that. I did not know that.
yeah, they did an experiment. They put a aluminum can inside of hydrogen peroxide, and the aluminum was dissolved, and what was left was actually the plastic. The plastic,
Yeah.
it looks
Okay.
like plastic bag. Yeah.
Okay. Because sometimes I'm drinking like out of like, I don't know, maybe it's like metal or aluminum, and I'm like, okay, at least this is maybe better, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah, it has this plastic inside. I don't know. They put it in order to acidic drinks not to react with aluminum. So this is like
Okay.
kind of make it safer, but not in terms of microplastics, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, other things are like tea bags. I mean, there are like
Mm.
plastic tea bags, but there are also paper tea bags that do have plastic-based glues. And yeah, another thing is plastic-based glues.
Okay.
I didn't know that that those exist. Or like plastic-based, I don't know how to properly call it, like paints. And also like when you have like a product and the product has like a name on it.
Yeah. Okay. So like the title or the brand name. Yeah. Printed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Okay.
printing,
Yeah.
plastic printing or something like that. Not like 3D,
Okay.
but
Yep.
yeah, that was something that I recently learned, and yeah, that was shocking for me.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the things that this should be maybe obvious when I think about it, but I kind of learned it through your account, was like, I never really thought of how many microplastics are released from doing laundry and from our
mm,
clothes, having like all of the fabrics that are essentially plastic, and that when we're doing our wash, it just like all gets released into that. That's not something I ever really thought about or put two and two together.
Honestly, I didn't too. But when I first started like my research in Kazakhstan about wastewater, yeah, the most of the microplastics that we found, we think they're coming from laundry, like from
Mm.
clothing. Yeah, laundry is like it's a big contributor to microplastics in our water, at least when it comes to wastewater. Yeah, so if possible, natural fabrics
Yeah. Or
are
less, wash your clothes less too.
yeah, that also works, and that's also better for your wallet. You don't need to pay
Yeah,
that
yes.
for water usage.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is something like when I saw that, I was like, okay, in the same boat, a lot of times we have very limited access to like
Yeah.
showers and laundry. So like even this past time I spent like, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 weeks where I couldn't do laundry. And I was like, well, this is good. This is good for us. This is sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, sometimes you don't even, how to say, like sometimes you overestimate how much you need to do laundry for your clothes.
Mm,
Sometimes you
yeah.
just put them to like air dry and they are okay and they are good to go to be worn again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So now I've seen this also a lot on your Instagram that you do give tips. So can you share with us a few tips of what can we do to, I guess, limit our exposure to microplastics?
Of course, first one is obvious, is to try to remove plastic things, especially those that are single-use plastics, because that's like
Mm,
the easiest thing that you can replace with like reusables. I would focus on the kitchen stuff or like food
mm,
stuff a lot, because usually there is a lot of heat involved there. And usually when you combine heat and plastic, it will generate a lot of microplastics, because heat is like catalyst for microplastics to be uh, break broke broken to
broken
break
down.
broken down, yeah, broken down from larger plastic objects. So that would be my main focus. Also, there were some recent studies about like microplastics in indoors,
Mm,
like dust that is around. In one study in Australia, they found out that almost 40% of all dust is already microplastics. Yeah. So I would recommend to vacuum your place often and keep your windows open.
mm,
That will help with at least, balance in the concentration. Yeah. Another very interesting article that I read was about like fermented food, how it helps with
mm.
microplastics that are in our guts. I mean, they're not helping to remove microplastics, but they can help with detoxifying them, because, as I said
Okay.
before, microplastics have a lot of different chemicals on top of it. So fermented foods like pickles, yogurt, kimchi, they can help with more or less detoxifying and making the toxic effect of microplastics to be less in your body. So yeah, that
Okay.
was.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was one that I actually saw it I think very briefly on your Instagram and I was quite surprised. Like I hadn't even thought about like, oh, okay, we can use food to our advantage to try to help out a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, fermented foods are good for you in general, not only for microplastics.
Right. Yeah, the gut. Yeah, that's very true. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, this is I think I mean, yeah, I think just like removing and the microplastics and especially like it is once you're aware of it and you realize like how that it can be actually challenging, like especially when you're going out to eat and like just how important it is to like bring your own Tupperware, little things like this that you can incorporate in your daily life to change that because it really is everywhere. Like sometimes it's hard and you have to go out of your way to kind of maybe if you're going to a restaurant be like, "Hey, please don't give me that. I don't need that plastic bag," or things like that because it's so ingrained, it's so normalized.
Yeah, yeah, that's totally true how this is so normalized. And those people who want to try to have less waste or consuming less, especially when it comes to plastic, for some reason we are seen as not normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's gonna change soon.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I do think it's becoming more of a trend and like as we make it also more accessible and more cool to not use plastic, then it will be really a thing, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And when we call out overconsumption with.
Yeah, exactly. Which also, I want to now talk really briefly, because I know you have to go soon, about the app that you're launching today, June 16th. So by the time this comes out, it will already be out. Can you tell me a little bit about the app that you've created?
Yeah, so basically, when I started learning about microplastic and stuff like this, I genuinely was lost in the beginning. But at the same time, I had so many things that I learned along the way that I really wanted to share with people. That's why I created my account last year, because I wanted to share my knowledge, everything that I learned, my research, and like my love for sustainability. And yeah, I started that last year. I created different content videos about it. And I seen that a lot of people were interested in the topic, and my account grew pretty fast, more or less. And I saw a lot of interested in people. But another thing for me, it was I thought that social media could be a great place to learn, but sometimes it can be a bit tricky. And there were people who were asking the same questions over and over again. And I don't mind answering. I like questions, but at this point, it's a bit difficult to answer all of them. And I really want a lot of people to learn more about microplastic, because the more interest we have from public, then the faster the regulations are coming, the policies are coming, and we're going to solve this problem together sooner. And I had this idea that I want to have one place or like one platform where all the information about microplastics will be there. You can educate yourself, or if you're too lazy, you don't need to educate, but you will have something that will make your life easier in general. I had this guy who came up with an idea of making like a scanner thing. So you can scan different things like tags of clothing or ingredient list of your skincare. We can even scan food packaging with it. And then the app will say the risk of microplastics, like from 1 to 10,
Okay.
and even give like different tips on what you can do to avoid this plastic or anything like that. Yeah, that was the first thing that we came up with, was like a scanner, but also we started developing the educational part of it as well. So I think it looks pretty cool, the education part, because that was done by my husband. So it's like this. You have all different lessons that I will be writing by myself, like in general, what is microplastics, about microplastics in the environment, in the human body. And also there will be a separate tab with all the different petitions about microplastics, because I've been collaborating with a lot of different plastic organizations, and I've been making ads for different petitions. And I thought it would be nice to have them all in one place. So yeah, that's basically what this app is all about, like everything microplastics. And it's launching today. It's still quite raw, I would say. There are still a lot of things that we will be adding, but I really couldn't wait. I really wanted people and everyone to see it. So yeah, we decided for the launch today. And also we got into Climate Launchpad. I don't know if you are familiar with Climate Launchpad. It's like
Not too familiar.
yeah, it's like a competition or like an accelerator for green business ideas. And
Okay.
there were only 10 10 teams that
Wow.
got. Yeah, and yeah, I really hope that this is like a national, so Climate Launch by Germany, and I really hope we're gonna make it to regionals, which will be
Yeah.
in.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm
What
very
is
excited.
what is the app called?
The name is Microplastic Free.
Okay. Amazing. I will download it right after this is done. Microplastic free.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that is really exciting. I mean, one of the things that I really love about the way that you've created a platform and a community in social media where your content is very engaging over a topic that sometimes can be hard to be engaging, especially when it's very sciencey. Like, I think you've been able to kind of like post it in a way where it's very understood by everyone. And I think it's amazing because that is something that even within the NGO in the same boat, we have a hard time. Like, okay, people don't want to always see the trash and don't want to always engage with like these climate facts. So I really like congratulations on what you've been able to build and with this app as well. I think that's really valuable and what we need to be able to like really spread the awareness more and then have more people push for regulations and to have a change in the way that we think of plastic and consume it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you go so you can celebrate the app. But thank you so much, Donna, for coming on. If people want to follow you, I know the app already, but if people want to follow you and see your research and your social media, where can they find you?
On my Instagram or TikTok, my handle is Dankazhe. I don't know if you will be able to, but it spells Dankazh.
I will put it down also in the description so people can go and look at it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, good luck with all the projects. Hopefully, we'll see you on one of our boats soon.
Yeah, definitely. I really want to go. Thank you so much for
For
having me.
sure.